Hey guys, it's me, Tiffany Parker. So, today I'm actually going to talk about one of my most requested videos, how to start a market. Now, this is going to be in a nutshell because I feel that there's just not enough time in the one video to really just dive in. So what I've done is created like bullet points of the most important things that you need to consider when you're starting a market. So let's start off with why. Are you an ex vendor or are you a current vendor and you feel like you could do it better? Do you see something that's missing in vendor markets or a niche that is missing that vendor markets would be that could make vendor markets a bit better as far as niches? I don't know if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, let me know in the comments. Or do you just want to give it a whirl? You know, some people just want to do things spur the moment and just try it, see if they're good at it, and go from there. Cool. Once you get your why out the way, it's time to start looking at locations. Now, under locations, I should have put budget because you need to know, you have to understand that based off the location, it determines how many vendors you can have, which means your pricing for each vendor is affected. So, under locations, you need to make sure that this particular venue you're looking at is one, has foot traffic when there's nothing happening. You need to make sure there's parking, ample parking that makes sense. Meaning nobody should have to walk a mile to get to their car. Nobody should have to walk a mile to haul their booth stuff. It should be a block at the most. A block. So find you a venue that has ample parking. Because some people are out here booking spots that have a lot of space to put vendors, but the parking lot literally only fits the vendors. It doesn't even fit. When guests come, they don't even have a room to park. So you need to make sure you have enough parking spaces for guests, potential guests, because you never know who's going to be showing up, your vendors, yourself, your team. So parking. You need to see if there's a restroom on the premise, around the premise, or near the premise. Meaning, if you're indoors, we know there's a restroom. If you're outdoors, good God, you might have to get a porta potty, which is another expense that you have to add to the location. Okay? Electricity, it's best if you can have electricity. If you can't, oh well. But I would be finding venues that have like electricity built into it because most vendors need that to power their computers, whatever. They like food vendors, they need to be able to plug in generators and things like that. So you need to make sure there's electricity. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is important, but to me, it's not really that important because everybody has a hotspot nowadays, and then most venues charge for Wi-Fi, from what I've seen, but I could be wrong. But Wi-Fi. Now let's get into pricing. You want to know how much it's going to cost you. So that means what this means. This doesn't just mean the price of the venue. It means the venue. It means how much you're going to charge the vendors. So pricing, how much is going to cost you, meaning the venue. Do you have to pay for a porta potty? Do you have to pay for electricity? Do you have to pay for the Wi-Fi? What do you have to pay for to be able to use this space and for it to work for your markets, for your vendors? Then you got to figure out how much space is actually available, because you can have a gorgeous venue, but you can only fit like 20 people up in there. So that's not going to work. You need to know how much space you're getting, because the amount of space determines how many vendors you can put in there, which means it determines the price of each vendor, like the vendor cost. So you need to know how much you're going to charge your vendors based off of the amount of vendors you can put in a venue, how much it costs you to book the venue and everything. Then you need to figure out the home base, your home. Where are you going to host these things? As far like where, how are you going to how are you going to take payment? How are you going to get applications in? How are you going to keep track? You need to figure out all of that and have a system in place, preferably automated, no paper applications. Who does that? Where that's like the dark ages, you know. Everything needs to be automated on the computer. There's no paper, there's no filing, there's none of that. Printing out all that, scanning, no. You need to figure out where people are going to find you, where people are going to be able to contact you, where people are going to get information about your markets, where you're going to have your calendar, all those things. You need to know all those things, how you're taking payment, how you keep track of payment, all of that, applications, all of that. That's something you have to figure out. Now, what else was I going to say? Oh, now, I had it, I should have wrote it down. One other thing that I would really think about when doing vendor markets is figuring out if you want to do them indoors or outdoors. Now, here's the pros of indoors. That means you could do them rain or shine, no problem, right? Also, indoors, it's cooler inside. People are more inclined to go inside, stay longer. There's bathrooms built in, all of that. However, you have to find an indoor space that is well traveled, that people like go to on a regular basis. So places like hotels, I would not host a vendor market there, unless your following and your marketing is going to be on point, because it's not every day that people go into the ballroom of a hotel building. It's not. So you have to do heavy marketing. If you're indoors and if you want to do indoors, what I would suggest is collaborating with another venue, like a restaurant or a bar or any place where people go to on a regular, consistent basis every single day. That's what you need to think about when you are trying to book an indoor venue. You don't want to be in the basement somewhere. You don't want to be in the back. You for sure don't want to be in the back of somebody's parking lot, okay? You want to be in the mix. So that's what you need to think about. Now, outdoors, the pros of outdoors and the pros and cons of outdoors. So outdoors is great because you have ample space. Normally, there's way more space to work with. More people would probably be able to come through the venue. If the weather's nice outside, it's good. So here are the cons. If it rains, you're pretty much like, it's a hit and miss, because I've hosted events where it's raining and people still came out, but then I've hosted events where it was completely dead because it was raining. The heat. Good God, the heat. It could be hot, it could be too cold, windy, all of these things you have to consider when hosting. So you have to have things in place, like in your vendor agreements, that addresses things like this, that addresses what happens when it rains, what happens if my tent blows over. Well, all these things, you got to have all that thought out, written out, and put in a vendor agreement, or you're going to have hell and high water. Okay? You need to protect yourself as the event coordinator as far as refunds and all of that. So if you don't have a vendor agreement in place that states what the rules and regulations are in a way for people to agree to it, not just agree to it, they have to say they agree to it, then that would just help you in the future, just get all those things put into, I don't know, a document or whatever, and it needs to be accessible to everybody, every single person that visits your website. Okay? And one other thing that I would do when considering starting a market would be get to know other event coordinators. Ask questions. Now, you're going to have some of those event coordinators that don't want to do anything and help you with nothing, because I've been there. There are people that I've asked that would tell me I'm not helping you, figure it out yourself, all this type of stuff. I'm not that type of person because we don't control the market. I don't control the market. So when it comes to this is, there's thousands of vendor markets going on. There's thousands of event coordinators. Clearly there's room for more because some of them are doing terrible and people are waiting for new folks to come on in, you know? So don't think you can't start or it's oversaturated. It's not. It's like a cycle. The people that are really good at what they do, they usually tend to stay around the longest. Excuse me, because they have structure already in place. They have people helping them. They have structure. The people that you see come, go, they don't have no structure. They don't have, their stuff worked out. They are just what I consider fly by nights, cash grabs, stuff like that, where they'll do it because it's quick cash. That's why you'll see some vendor markets that have a whole lot of people in it, like vendors, but it wasn't well marketed. There's no actual foot traffic other than the vendors and stuff like that. There's little to no anything, you know what I mean? And I do want to talk about marketing events and how event coordinators are marketing events today, what's good, what's bad, what to look out for and stuff like that, because some of these, the way they're doing it, it's almost like they tell their vendors they're marketing the events, but they're not really marketing the events. They're putting out a flyer, a vendor call for an event, but because they have the event date, location, and all that type of stuff in time, they think that's marketing the event. No, that's a vendor call. A vendor call is different from marketing the event to the public because the language is different. So I'm going to go into that in a different video. But anyways, really quickly, you need to know your why. You need to know your location, how much it's going to cost you, how much space you're going to have, how many vendors you can fit in that space. You need to figure out how you're going to break that cost down between the vendors, what you're going to take home, because once you break the cost down, you realize, okay, for this amount of space, I could fit this many vendors, which means I could charge this amount per vendor and my space is covered, but you have to pay yourself. So then you're going to have to add money to that vendor fee, okay? So that's why it matters. The biggest thing is the price of venue, okay? Then you got to figure out how you're going to get the word out, where people are going to find you, how they're going to pay you, how you're going to take applications, all that. And then you just need to figure out dates. That was the last thing I needed to talk about, dates. When are you going to host this and what time of days? What time of day and when? I can't help you with that because I don't know where you live watching this, okay? But where I'm at, I live in a neighborhood that is full of elementary schools and kids and families. So I base my events around that. And I try my best to work around what's happening in the schools, okay? At least the high schools, because there's a lot of kids out here. I do that. So where you're at, look around, see what the schools are doing, because you don't want to have an event on the day of prom. You don't want to have an event when it's homecoming football game or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that that's going to affect your traffic, but it could, because if you're hosting it at the same time, nobody will probably show up, especially in a small town where people like literally flock to the football game, okay? So you have to think about that. When you're going to host it, what time of year, because listen, I, for the longest, was not hosting any vendor markets during the spring and summer. Well, I would do early spring, but the summertime, no. Next year would be the first time I'm hosting a market in my normal venue during the spring and summertime. During the summertime. I'm hosting a couple of markets now. It's because I was either asked to bring in some vendors or to set up a vendor market. And that's different from being outside in the park during summer. So I haven't been doing it, but my vendors have been asking. They want more, they want more markets I have my schedule for vendor markets is really, really heavy starting at the end of August. That is from August to January. It's jam packed. We have like 3 or 4 markets a month, you know? So that is how to start a market in a nutshell. I hope this video was valuable. Yes, I will be making isolated videos about each thing, going into it, location, pricing, setting your system up to accept vendors and stuff like that. And I will help you with that if that's something that you guys are interested in. If you guys are, comment below this video what you want to hear from me pertaining to starting a vendor market, and I will definitely help you. All right, you guys, you have a good